Hello everyone, happy summer. So I am coming again on YouTube to do another video, and this one will be about my summer deck list, or the decks I intend on using for the coming 2 to 3 months. I have recently acquired new decks, which for me is always a very difficult choice because I'm trying to keep my collection relatively small. But of course, you still have multiple decks when you end up practicing tarot almost every day. So this is kind of the rules of the game, but then I'm trying to be very intentional about the decks I'm bringing home. And I have just came back from a 2 weeks holiday, during which I have bought 4 more decks, which for me is insane. It's like a lot of decks at once. And I was feeling very overwhelmed. And so I decided that I needed to restrain the amount of decks I was going to use for the current period. And so those are the 5 decks I am planning on using this summer. And there are 2 new ones to my collection in this list, which I have already used a couple of times by the point of making this video. But based from my previous video on YouTube, those are new to my collection at this point. And then this is another tarot, so there are 3 tarots in this list, which I have been having before and I have been struggling with a little bit. So I really want to dive into it more this summer as well. And they are all very summery decks that I think really fit the vibes. And I'm adding here 2 oracles, one to use alone and one to use paired with the Forest of Enchantment tarot. So I'm going to go through them one by one, or in the case of the ones that I'm intending on pairing, I'll show them together. But you know what? Let's start with a deck that I've already talked about quite a bit on YouTube, and so I'm not gonna go into a lot of details about it. And it is this oracle deck, which is a French oracle deck, so Mon Compagnon spirituel by Cécile Desthuilliers. It's French and it has a very big guidebook in French. Oh, good to know that I had left a card in here, probably for a reason that I have now forgotten. I remember when I put it in there. Maybe it would have been actually worth keeping it out. So I'll just put it here. But yeah, so I'm planning on using this deck because I still want to also work with oracles this summer, and I'm very much have been using tarot intensively, and I think I'm missing a little bit kind of more concrete messages, maybe easier to interpret messages, because usually oracles I always use the guidebook. And also the colors of this deck makes it very summery, very bright, colorful. So really I'm interested in trying to here and there just take a card out when it feels necessary. And that's exactly what I've done 2 weeks ago when I pulled this card out. I've been trying to see if I could combine it with some of the decks I was intending on using. But unfortunately, it wasn't really working for me. So I thought, you know what, I'll just keep using it the way I have been using it for the past months, which is really just as a clarifier, as a 1-card pull here and there when I felt like I needed the guidance of this oracle deck. So this is this deck. I have edged mine in kind of this multi-color way. And now let's get into really the meat of it all. And that is the Tiger Tarot, which I have been waiting for a long time. I flashed on this deck. I just got completely obsessed with it. And it did not get better with time, as sometimes it does. So I searched for it everywhere, thinking, oh, it's not on sale anymore. What do I do? But you can actually contact Lori Field. So this is Lori Field, and on Instagram, her handle, I think she has written it on the box. Actually, no, but yeah, it comes in this tuck box. It's not very solid, so yeah, just a little note on that has to be a bit careful when traveling, which was my case. But yeah, so it's a Lori Fields Tiger Tarot. Her Instagram handle, where is it? So it's Bunny Planet 1. And so the way to get this deck is to contact Lori directly. I think she still has a few more available, and then you pay her via PayPal, and then she sends it to you, and she's very accommodating in terms of sending it even to Europe, which was very nice. And the cards were written also in cooperation with, oh my god, with Laetitia Barbier, who is very knowledgeable about tarot, and so far from the spreads I've made, the messages of the cards, while being quite short, are amazing. So I'm very, very happy about it. But let me just show you a few cards, because I am just building the suspense here. So this is the kind of artwork that this deck has. It is multimedia collage, so it's not just photography. In the background, there's all kinds of art styles used, but all in all, it's a collage deck. And usually I'm not that attracted to collage decks. I know some people on YouTube are all about them, and maybe I'm going to understand why, because already working with this deck, it's been really wonderful to have so many elements to think about and to read with. I was intrigued by the Rituals Tarot, which is a tarot which has not even like the name of the cards on it, so it's a little bit of a guessing game at the beginning. But I don't know, I like the artwork of that one, but the colors were not quite what I wanted. Like, it wasn't my color palette. And it was also maybe not exactly my style. Like, I'm not so much into, I don't know, antiques and you know, historical figure, whereas kind of those anthropogenic animal figures that Lori creates are all I'm into. And the tiger-based deck is amazing. But yeah, it's mainly human-animal figures in this deck. And there is a lot of court cards. So as you can see, there's princes, there's knights, there's page, and you also have soothsayer, and queen and king. So a lot of court cards, but you can learn more about that by watching other walkthroughs on YouTube. So I'm gonna stop now, like, showing you cards, but it's really, really a beautiful deck. It's kind of funny because I've been waiting on this one for quite a while, because I contacted Lori, I think it was in April, and she was traveling to France this summer, so that's why we waited until she could send it from Europe and avoid a little bit of shipping costs. And so I made an effort to not look more at walkthroughs of this deck, and then when I first, just had it in my hand and did a little whoosh, whoosh, I was like, oh my god, this is a lot. Am I gonna like it as much as I thought I would? And then I started working with it, and the love was back 100 times more strongly. And the reason for that is also because from the very, very first spread I've done with this deck, it has started to work very synchronistically with a book I've been reading recently, which is Women Who Run with the Wolves. I've heard Cuneo talk about it and also kind of do a self-workshop thingy with this book. And it looked very, very much a book that I would like, and I have been starting to read it. I'm already not quite far because it's a really big book, but you know, I've read at least 4 tales and their explanations, because this book is basically myths and stories that show you how to become the wild woman or embrace the wild woman archetype. And it's such a good way of doing it, where I feel like I'm back into, I don't know, school of learning or of reading a myth or reading a story and then having the story being analyzed in such a beautiful and wonderful way. And the main thing that's amazing also with this book is how easy it is to do spreads for tarot for it. There are also some questions asked sometimes that can be wonderful journal prompts. That I'll probably do a video dedicated to this work, showing you the different spreads I'm doing for each tale. I can show you one right now, which I have out here, which was based on the tale of Manawi, for those that have read the book, which is a book where the spreads I'm doing are based on the stories, so it might not be relevant to you, but just to show you an example of how much they synchronize and how to read with this deck works. So this is the Manawi spreads that I have done. In the story, it is the story of a man that is in love with 2 twin sisters. And their father say that Manawi cannot marry them until he guesses their names. And it's an African-American tale in a polymorphous society, so that's why he can marry 2 women. But basically what happens in the tale is that Manawi tries to guess the names and he fails. And then his dog, at some point he brings his dog to meet the 2 women, and the dog also starts to get a liking of them and stick around to learn their names. And every time, so he kind of spy on the woman, hear their names, try to get back to Manawi to tell him the names. And there are obstacles in his way that prevents him from telling the names to Manawi. And so he has to go back and learn the names again, and again and again, until finally he manages to tell the name to Manawi and he manages to marry the sisters. And so there's a lot of symbolism, of course, in all of those tales. So the 2 twin sisters, or the 2 facets of woman. So there are kind of 2 sides of the same coin, if you like. And at some point in the tale, it's basically kind of the life and death opposition. And funnily enough, I've got the death card for the twin sister that was below, because those cards represent the 2 names. And also it talks about the importance of names, of naming things. And then the dog actually represents the instinctual nature of the man, and how it's important to be in this position of learning about woman and of those 2 forces, and that it's only by learning and being tenacious and being able to appreciate both opposite forces of inside woman that eternal love or unconditional love works. And then the 2 cards here are the distractions, the obstacles that in the tale prevent the dog to tell the names to Manawi right away. So one are distractions, so things that the ego wants, kind of everything that, like the dog smells a nice piece of fresh meat in the forest, goes to eat it and then forgets the name. So those are the distractions. And then there's also the predator, which also connotates to the very the second tale in the book, where we all have this internal predator that tries to destroy us or belittle us or, go against our deep wishes. Also linked with the ego, most likely, but that little voice that's always very negative in your head. So those are the obstacles the dog faces, the distractions and the predator. This is the card representing the dog, and this is the card representing the two names, which, like I said, represent life and death, or what you show to the world, so the external face and the internal face, what you do not show to the world. So if I quickly go through the cards I've got and how much I feel like it really is bang on. The Eight of Eyes representing the suit of coins of pentacles in normal tarot. It's actually, when I read the guidebook, it's a very positive card, but it kind of also represents kind of this childish part of you, and in the guidebook, once again, more in terms of a positive way. But the way I've understood it is, for me, is kind of, I saw butterflies and ice cream and, I don't know, this weird chicken bone thing. And I was just like, kind of like all those wants, the things that I personally want all the time and I'm unable to control. So this is kind of what this card represents. Outside of its meaning that now in this spread needs to be very negative, this is such a beautiful card, and I don't know, the background of it is so wonderful. Then for the predator, I've got the world, once again in the guidebook, a very, very positive card. But I think within the context of this spread, the way that I really read this card is, like I said, the little voice in your head that says negative things to you is usually coming from the society in which you live in. So the external world, this external world that creates this negative vision of yourself because you feel like you have to conform to norms. So this is how I've understood this. And then this is the first card that I actually pulled, because I kind of moved them around for it to be more coherent. I think at the beginning I put the dog kind of at the start of this spread. But there is no better card than Temperance to explain the idea of merging opposites, of balancing the yin and the yang. So this is the first card I pulled to represent the dog that is supposed to, win over and from an instinctual part and be curious about the woman nature. So I was very happy to get this card, and I don't think it requires an explanation here. Similarly, the Death card for the internal world. Also in the book, there is now that I've read the chapter afterwards, there is so much about the life, death, and life cycle and the importance of allowing death to happen. And, there, once again, no better card for this part. And in the guidebook this time, it was pretty bang on. And the idea of, again, having to face the trauma and the negative things that happen in your internal world and kind of, cleansing it in a sense. And then the Four of Swords came up as like the name of my life part of my external life, if I say. And in the guidebook, which was very helpful, it talks a lot about kindness. When I looked at it before looking into the guidebook, the first thing that came to my mind was also protection, because of the way the swords are represented here. So maybe being a little bit guarded, but in a way that brings rest and that brings serenity. So I thought that this was also something that I could understand as maybe the personality that I show the world, you know. So yeah, this is an example of a spread with the Tiger Tarot and the way that I'm going to keep using this deck moving forward. It's been so far an incredible journey with this deck and with this book combined. Once again, to go back to kind of the main theme here, I think based on how fast I've been going with this, that this is going to occupy me maybe all the way to mid-July or all month of July. I really want to do a deep dive with this tarot, so it might be that in the end, this will be the only tarot deck I'm going to end up using this summer. Or like the main one, at least the one with which I do 80% of my tarot readings. But for like, this is the deck for right now. This is the deck that I'm going to be using for the upcoming weeks or months and the beginning of summer, now that we are in summer, since midsummer has happened. And then the deck that I'm using already a little bit now, and that I will maybe continue to use in August as well, and that is the epitome for me of summer. This is such a good summer deck, is the Herbcrafter's Tarot. This is very easy to find in comparison to the Tiger Tarot, so, you know, if you want one recommendation from me, this might be this one. It was on my wish list for a really long time, and I managed to actually try the card in a store beforehand, and that is what convinced me, because I was a little bit on the fence about this deck because I didn't know how good it would be to actually read with it, how to interpret the card. Of course, the artwork of Joanna Parel-Colbert is really beautiful, is really nice. I've also been interested in the Gaian Tarot before I saw this deck. And also when watching other people's walkthrough, I don't know, somehow I was interested in it. I really liked it. I knew it would be so amazing for the summer, but I was struggling to go through an entire walkthrough, which is kind of weird. But that happened. But then in the store, in the moment, I just felt such a strong connection to it. Also, this deck gives very strong summer cottage vibes. And I had just came back from a few days at a summer cottage. And in Finland, if you know that being in a summer cottage, in nature, in the countryside, doing like bathing in a lake and doing sauna is the entire vibe. And this deck is just like all of that. It's like really this summery, serene, warmth feelings. So it just really stood out to me, and yeah, I just ended up really loving it right away. And I am going to be able to also show you a spread that I have done for the new moon with this deck. So the new moon that just happened on, was it 25th of June? Because I'm filming this a day later, so. But yeah, also the guidebook for this deck is really wonderful, so that also helps a lot. And I have been, as you can see, kind of, because since the artwork is so realistic, it's a great deck also to learn about plants even more. So I've been translating them to French to have both English and French names in the book. And then I've been having a little game of trying to find them in nature. Because even though this deck is, not necessarily on European vegetation, there is still very many plants in common. So it's not that difficult to actually use this deck somewhere else than where it's from. But so let me show you my little new moon spread so that you can see how it is to read with this deck. I'm not showing every card for each one of those decks because there are other walkthroughs that are really well made and I don't think it's necessary. But I like to show examples of spreads because I think that can be something more interesting. And also, what was I gonna say? Yes, I wanted to say about how I'm going to use this deck. So this deck, while I'm in this deep love situation with the Tiger Tarot and Woman Who Won with the Walls, is more for those general spreads like the new moon, for example, or some that are not about the themes of the book, that are more general or more specific about a question unrelated to the subjects in the book. So this is how I'm going to use it. And then once I'm done with the workshop, we'll see how I will use it then. But so it's already in service, let's say, but not as the main work I'm doing at the moment. And so I'm going to do now a little parenthesis on astrology. And I forgot to bring my little astrology notebook. So come with me to go pick it up. But so I have been doing a deep dive on astrology when working with the Ukiyo Romance Tarot. And I realized that I am actually not wanting to follow the tropical system or the normal astrology system anymore, because it's actually very ancient and there's reasons to want to continue to use that one. But I think since then, astronomy has developed a lot, and I prefer to use what is called what is the name of this? Astronomy-based astrology with the 13 constellations. So I know that for some people, the new moon was in Sagittarius. For me, it was in Gemini, because when I look at skylive.com, I think is the name, that gives you the actual positions of the planet at the time of the new moon, the moon within the sky was in Gemini. So that is what I'm following, and I am not following the normal system where you just divide the year into 12 signs of the same length, and then you say, okay, we are in Sagittarius now, the new moon is in Sagittarius, because that's how has been decided. This is kind of basically a calendar, the normal astrology. I'm using astronomy-based astrology, and so this spread was based on Gemini. And I have been in the process of doing this little art project. I am not very good at art, so please do not judge, but I've just been using this little thing I've been doing about the themes to look at in Gemini. So it's about merging opposites, about learning, curiosity, about communication, adaptability. It's related to air, and within my system, the sun is in Gemini from June 20th to July 20th. So that's just for extra information. And so in the new moon, we make new intentions. And like I said, the point of Gemini is to merge opposites and also to learn new things and communication. And so I decided, I'm going to do another one kind of similar to the Tiger Tarot spread, and another one that shows the two opposite forces that I'm facing right now and the lessons that would allow me to merge them together. And then the last card being the resolution of if I learn the lesson. And once again, this has been a wonderful spread, because the two cards I've got for The opposite forces were the Fool and the Hermit. And already, just based on the way they look, they are kind of like similarly, like the artwork is quite similar, but at the same time showing opposition, you know? So for example, the Fool is about, I don't know, sharing your light with the world, a leap of faith in the world, being adventurous, going out there, you know, and facing the world with this big innocence. Whereas the Hermit, on the other side, is all about withdrawal within the self, solitude, and wisdom. So those cards are very, very opposite. And so at the same time, it was telling me basically that within the new moon, I had those two forces in me. I wanted to get out there, to be ambitious, adventurous, to, you know, let myself do things that I maybe wouldn't dare usually. But at the same time, I also want to do this reflective work and continue to work on myself. And so the solution I've got to merge these two is the Seven of Earth, represented by oak. And this card was talking about mainly rhythms, like, you know, this is kind of set in the beginning of the autumn. And this idea that you need to maybe like really understand nature's rhythms and let yourself be guided by them to do your work. And that you also needed to have patience to slowly achieve what you want to do. And that by doing those things, you will become oak and very strong. And I thought this was a wonderful message, this idea of basically understanding nature's rhythm, maybe my internal rhythms as well, and the moments at which point I should more show this face and at which point I should more show this face based on the way I feel and the way how rhythmically things are going, and also using nature as my guide. So that was really the message of this card. Wonderful guidebook. I've you know, again, tried to analyze the cards without using the guidebook, but I have to admit it's still true that there are some inspiration in some of the cards. I think it's better actually with the minor arcana. There's more to read in the minors than in the majors, to be honest, because the majors are really, really focused on the plants. But the guidebook is wonderful, even though we'll see if I correct that later on when using it more. But I would say the messages are more positive than negative. So then there's maybe a work to do to make the messages fit with a negative connotations to the cards when you need a negative connotation. And so finally, for the resolution, I have gotten the Adelita of Air, which is the Knight of Air. And this is, this little representation is, what was it called? Like a, let's look at it. Bajos, a warm vaginal steam bath. And this was so amazing. I let you read it if you need to. But this was very, very well connotated to women who run with the wolves. It was even mentioned in the card. So I was like, ooh. So that's why I'm also still using this deck. Even though the Tiger Tarot, I still feel like is the one that I really want to use with this book. But this is wonderful as well. And the two are linking it up with each other beautifully. But so basically this is about speaking your truth, you know, of course, the Knight of Air, but in a way that's very feminine, you know, very like in the book, it says like you speak the truth of who you are deeply within your ovaries, you know. And basically I said that was the resolution card if this learning was achieved, so if we learn our rhythms. But I also think this can be a great intention for the new moon, to manage to have this connection between your voice and your vagina, to be able to speak your truth. This could be our intention for a new moon in Gemini, so kind of about communication, for the next 2 to 3 weeks until the next full moon, to focus on speaking our truth. And that is where I will leave it for this tarot, with which I have had wonderful, wonderful readings as shown here. So I think those two tarot decks are going to be my main babes for the coming months. But I have a feeling that towards the end of summer, I might want to introduce a new deck, maybe, like still wanting novelty in the world of tarot, even though for now those two are very novel to me, so it's difficult to imagine. And maybe I'm presenting this now and I'm going to end up not using it. But so this is the Forest of Enchantment Tarot with the Portraits of a Woman Oracle. And basically I've been trying to see if I could have oracles that would pair with those two decks, but nothing was working for me. And I think I will continue to use them as tarot decks on their own, with pulling a card from, this oracle here and there. But I've been trying to pair Portraits of a Woman with them, with no luck. But I realized when doing that Portraits of a Woman has quite of a summery vibe as well. And I think, it's also all about women, all about affirmation that are supposed to, help you out. And I thought, I still feel like it would be a great deck to keep using now that I'm reading this book and maybe after finishing the book. And then when I was wrapping things up with no luck in terms of finding oracle pairings, I was like, let me see how it looks with Forest of Enchantment, because I would like to keep exploring Forest of Enchantment, see if I can build a stronger connection with it, because I've been struggling a little bit with Forest of Enchantment. And I thought that these two decks worked really well together. So let me show you how they do look together. And so this, like I said, would be more of a late August or August in general kind of spread for me. So once again, they are not perfect together. I'm sure that there's much better oracles to go with this deck. But to me, they still work. They are still giving me something that I might be after. And I think the absence of border in both game is helping out my vision. And weirdly, even though the Forest of Enchantment is mainly green and that this one is slightly more colorful, they still match somewhat in a color scheme. And maybe slightly also in the artwork. I mean, of course, Portraits of a Woman is a lot less fairy tale-like and kind of child fairy tale, but still, it works, I think. But yeah, I have not done any readings with those two decks together for now, so it will be something to be looking forward to. And I think I'm gonna do 2 more and then I will conclude this video because I think it's already quite long. But those are basically the decks that I will be using this summer. I hope that this inspired you to maybe try to see which one you would like to use. Stay tuned for potentially a video explaining how to combine Women Who Run with the Wolves and the Tiger Tarot, or any tarots in your collection that seems to be working for you in terms of working with this book. But I think this might only be relevant to the people that know about the book. It's going to be difficult to explain the different spreads without actually explaining the whole book. So maybe it will be a series on each tale. That could be an idea. But we will see. But yeah, so I'm going to end with this. So 7 of Visions, I am empathetic and the keeper of challenges. There's quite a little bit of a contrast normally with those 2 cards, potentially. And yeah, thank you very much for watching and hopefully see you in my next video. Bye bye!